Hello there, I'm Matthew Stevenson. I'm Senior Insurance Specialist with RBC Insurance, and I'm joined by Ryan Carson, lawyer in Burlington and an expert in wills, powers of attorney, and processing estates. So Ryan, I'd like to draw up a scenario for you. Let's say we have a common thing. Elderly couple, they own the family home that they have owned for 40 years, they have liquid assets, and they have now adult children. If one of these spouses is to pass away, leaving a survivor, and there is now no will in place and no more spousal rollover, with no will in place, what's it going to look like for these assets to get into the hands of the adult children when it comes time? Is this going to be easy? Let's just put a for sale sign on the home, or is this going to be more of an involved and intricate process without that will?
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. You raise a very common situation, more common than probably most people think.
The statistics show there's not enough wills out there?
Yeah, there's typically 75% or more of the population missing a will or an up-to-date will. Might actually be a higher percentage, depending on what the stats are showing, but it's pretty safe to say at least 3/4 of the population don't have proper wills or wills at all. I would say the main issue with your scenario is it creates uncertainty. You know, a lot of people ask me, like, you know, why do I need a will? Like, well, you know, my stuff's simple. Everybody thinks their stuff is simple, right?
I've got a house, I've got an account, and that's it.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah, they think very simple, straightforward. Everybody's very modest about their affairs, even when maybe they shouldn't be. Even if you have a very modest estate, the will gives you an opportunity to create certainty. That's the biggest thing that I like about the advantage of having a will, is you are creating your final instruction, your final wishes. You're appointing people that at the present time of you creating that will, you trust the most to take care of your final affairs. And that's really, I think, one of the most crucial and important parts, because without that happening, you're at the mercy of whatever the government in their wisdom has set up for you. Dying without a will is called an intestacy. They have intestacy rules on who would be the most appropriate, next person up to be the estate trustee, the person in charge of making sure your, affairs are dealt with, doling out inheritance and so forth. It also, the intestacy has a very scripted enumeration of who gets what first, right?
Which may not necessarily play into actual family dynamics.
Exactly.
Right.
So in your scenario that you gave, where you've got a couple with a family, they've got a home, they've got a business, they've got no wills. Is this going to be simple and straightforward? Well, it could be, right? It could be, but again, where's the certainty now? They both passed away suddenly. You don't have to look far in the news to realize accidents happen.
Of course.
And unfortunately, they seem to be happening more frequently now. But accidents happen. None of us are going to live forever, and nobody's immune to an accident.
Right.
So it's really important to come in, whether it's with ourselves at Carson Law or another legal professional team, get the proper advice, have discussions. And it doesn't really just stop with the lawyer. There's people got to come talk to you about, the insurance component of their plan. There's going to be, a counterpart for you would be, the financial planner with the investments.
Right.
There's going to be talking to an accountant about tax considerations, right? So it's really a team approach. I'm not going to know everything about how to set it up. I know what to look for from a legal perspective, and we'll certainly handle that part of it. But then it's really a question of how are we going to bring everybody else in that's appropriate to bring in, so that this is a holistic approach, right? And so going back to that example of, is it going to be simple? It could be, but the will's certainly going to make it more straightforward, more simple, because it's going to be in black and white. This is the person I want to be in charge. This is the backup to that person if that person is gone. These are the guardians for my kids who are not 18 yet. This is what I want to have happen to the home. This is what I want to have happen to my business. With the business wrinkle, there is a common trend now in legal practice where we would encourage people to do what are called multiple wills, or some people call it primary, secondary wills. There's also corporate versus non-corporate wills. It's all the same.
Right.
The principle is you create more than one will for different asset pools. So if we want to take a pool of assets that are all sort of, we'll call them the family assets, you know,
Yep.
the house, some bank accounts, some investments, you know, maybe a boat, RV, car, you know, these kind of personal family assets,
Yep.
we put that in the primary will.
Okay.
And then in the secondary will, we would put in your corporate assets very distinctly to say this secondary will is, you know, XYZ Corp, all accounts, all equipment, all inventory, all shares
Yeah.
of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that does, it would create a secondary estate, which then you can keep out of probate, or what used to be called
Okay.
probate,
Right.
which is a government tax, really just for administration purposes.
Yep.
So everybody knows the government gets a lot of money on your taxes. There's no end to that. Why give them any more than you need to?
Of course.
So again,
That's a great point.
it's doing the will is going to create certainty, and at the very least,
And simplicity.
Simplicity.
Yeah, I think that's really important to highlight the simplicity end of it, because now we're talking the scenario that the second of the two parents is now gone. This is an extremely stressful time for the adult children. So to have that simplicity there and that assuredness, absolutely essential at this time in their lives.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. I mean, it's stressful. Sometimes the family gets along really well. Other times they've never got along well. Sometimes they got along well, but it's an emotional period of time when there's a death, or when they're both passed, and sometimes things get said or done in those moments, and that, you know, starts to drive wedges between people.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think the last thing any parent wants is for their kids not to, you know, get along and love one another and have a smooth transition when they're gone.
Yeah.
So the will, again, if anything, should create simplicity.
That's great. That's a great point. Yeah.